Okay, so like I said, chapter 11, Greece and the Middle East. I want to start off by showing you guys a map of this region. So get that. Okay, so if we're looking at a map of Greece on the world scale, this is the region that we're talking about right here. I know that's not a very big screen. So if we're looking at it more zoomed in, this is the region that we're talking about right here. So the one thing that basically tied all these countries and regions together is this sea here, the Aegean Sea. So you will see a lot of foods in their cuisine, mainly related to seafood, that have been harvested from this sea over centuries. So you will see seafood prominent in the Greeks' diet. But also, this region has had a rather tumultuous and struggling time with agriculture. And I know if you think of Greek food, you think of rich, diverse foods that are high quality ingredients like fine wines and certain types of olive oils and vinegars and things of that nature. But those ingredients were not always available to this region, especially, in the BC area, or the BC era rather, when people started settling in this region. One thing to note is this is still on the continent of Europe, but there is a mountain range here in the north. You can't really see it on this map. That basically is like a barrier between this region and the rest of Europe. So even though it's on the continent of Europe, it's still a remote region in this area. So your book talks about geography of the region, and goes into a little bit of the terrain and how people settled in this region. But to get an idea of the climate here, it's very dry. It's a very rocky, mountainous terrain, so not a lot of crops grow well here. They experience drought a lot of the times, depending on the year, and they have experienced years and definitely times of drought in the early ages. So agriculture was somewhat of a struggle for them until modern technology allowed them to grow things in this region that necessarily wouldn't be suitable for this region. So that's why you'll see certain ingredients like olives and wine, which olives and grapes don't necessarily need a rich fertile soil, they grow well in a dry climate. So that's why you see things or ingredients like that traced back all the way to the BC area. So, like I said, the common thing that ties all these together is this Aegean and Mediterranean Sea. So, also, your book discusses a lot of history and culture. I'm not going to get too deep into the history and culture, but it is important that you understand a little bit of it, so that you know how the foods and where the foods came about. So, the earliest known civilization of this land would be the Cretians. So the island of Crete is located here. And in the times the Cretians were thriving, they didn't really have a lot of adversaries, and they thrived for a long period of time because there was nobody inhabiting this land. And like I said, they thrived for a while, but the Cretians' downfall was that they had no line of defense from anything. So we know this area to be ruled by the Romans, and the Romans took over a large portion of Greek around 150 BC. And they blended a lot of their cooking and influence into the Greek culture. So one thing that your book discusses is the Byzantine and the Ottoman empires. So you may see a couple questions on your quiz referring to the Byzantine or Ottoman empires. The Byzantine Empire basically was the Roman Empire. This was the continuation of the Roman Empire into the Middle Ages. So the other empire that your book discusses is the Ottoman Empire. So the Ottoman Empire was run by the Turks, or the Turkish. You can see Turkey over here to the east. There obviously, if you know anything about Greek history, there were a lot of wars, and there was a lot of battles in this region, mainly between So like I was saying, in this region, you had a lot of people ruling at different times. Um, but with each invasion and settlement in this area, here I will pull up the map again real quick. So with each invasion and settlement came different culinary influences. So, like I said, the Romans, the Venetians, Turks, Slavic, and even the English influenced foods in this region. And you will see that influence in some of the dishes that are still prominent to this region, but also have been part of their cuisine for centuries. So everybody has probably studied at some point Greek mythology and literature, whether it be in elementary school or high school. But this region was a very, what's the way to put it, a very progressive area. They developed writing, poetry, math, and we even get our political foundation of democracy from this region. So we can credit this Greek region with a lot of education and things that we still use today, especially things like the alphabet, which were developed in this region. So you had several periods of rise and fall over centuries. The Archaic period was the earliest, and this is when democracy was introduced to this area. Also, you had a classical period where most of you probably would recognize the classical period as the Battle of Sparta and the Trojan Wars in that period. Like I said, there was a very tumultuous history, but a lot of good things were brought about from all these different settlers and invasions. So, with that being said, I'm going to play you guys a video to give you a little bit of an overview of this region. Okay.
Art, philosophy, democracy, and heroes. These are just a few achievements of the legendary civilization known as ancient Greece. Ancient Greece was born on the shores of the Aegean Sea about 4,000 years ago. In over a millennium, it expanded to lands as far west as Spain and as far east as India. Throughout this age of empire, the ancient Greeks made political, militaristic, and cultural achievements that resonated long after their empire fell. Part of the ancient Greece legacy involved politics, one of which was the political system of Greece itself. Unlike many nations that were under unified rule, Greece was a collection of over 1,500 territories that acted as sovereign nations. Called city-states, these territories had their own rulers and sometimes fought each other. Another political development was the institution of the first large-scale democracy. Developed in the city-state of Athens, democratic rule was a way to give the Greek people representation and political power. The Greeks also earned a strong reputation for their military. The military helped expand the Greek Empire by establishing colonies overseas, and it protected Greece itself from foreign invaders like the Persian Empire. When such a threat occurred, city-states united to defend their homeland. Many Greeks, particularly in Sparta, took immense pride in their military and regarded their soldiers as heroes. Their heroism was often turned into legend thanks to literary works like the Iliad. War heroes also inspired the creation of the Olympics, which celebrated physical competition. Of all aspects of ancient Greek civilization, their cultural contributions left a considerable mark on the Western world. Particularly noteworthy were the ancient Greeks' art and architecture. They created incredible sculptural works, such as standing figures and reliefs. Plus, they developed 3 types of columns and incorporated them to structures like the Parthenon. This artistry was imitated by other civilizations and spread throughout the globe for thousands of years. How the Greeks interpreted the world was also reflected in other cultures. Greek religion, which was comprised of many anthropomorphic deities, helped shape the spiritual beliefs of the Etruscans and later the ancient Romans. Greek philosophy, which explored matters of reason, ethics, and natural law, influenced later civilizations' achievements in politics and science. Greek language made quite an impact as well. Ancient Greek, at about 3,400 years old, provided the basis of many modern languages. The English language alone has thousands of words with Greek roots. Ancient Greece's artistry, regard for heroes, and democratic rule left a considerable impression on world history. With contributions that lasted for millennia, the civilization of ancient Greece is nothing short of legendary.
Okay, so hopefully that gave you some good insight as to all the different things that we have taken from this region. You even heard in that video, they developed what we know as the city, and they called the city states polises, which I believe that might be a question in your quizzes, but they developed the structure of cities. They developed writing. They developed politics. So we can credit this region with a lot more than just the foods that we take from it. So let's talk a little bit about the cuisine now. So better yet, I'm going to go to my PowerPoint here. All right, so Greece, Turkey, and the Levant. Ancient Greece was a civilization belonging to a period of Greek history from the Dark Ages of the 12th through 9th centuries BC to the end of antiquity. Antiquity was a period in which food products were very sparse. In the early periods of this region, they hadn't really developed agriculture. So they were attempting to grow things like legumes and wheat in this region, but they were struggling to do so, like I said, because of the terrain. Number one, is very dry in this region and rocky. But also, they didn't have irrigation and things like that to help their crops grow. So they had to rely on the climate itself, and oftentimes there were long periods of drought and famine. And they even see this now when they are finding artifacts from this region. And an interesting fact about this region was that they believed that women did not need to eat as much as a man did. They believed that men required more nourishment. So a lot of times, the women and children would go malnourished for long periods of time because there was, number one, there was not really a heavily supply of food products. So like I said, they have uncovered a lot of artifacts, especially from this period where there was a lot of child mortality. And this is simply because the children weren't getting nourishment that they needed. And if you look at some of the artifacts that they've uncovered in this region, you'll see a lot of small children buried in this period just because they couldn't survive these periods where the food was so scarce. So immediately following this period was the beginning of the early Middle Ages and the Byzantine area. Remember, I told you the Byzantine area was when the Roman Empire split into two separate empires. So you had Eastern Roman, known as the Byzantine, and the Byzantine ruled most of the Eastern and Southern Europe during the Middle Ages. The capital city was Constantinople and was the largest and wealthiest in Europe at the time. The Ottoman, known as Rome, and known in Western Europe as the Turkish Empire, or simply Turkey, controlled much of Southeast Europe, Western Asia, and North Africa between the 14th and 20th centuries. You also heard me say the Levant when referring to this region. So the Levant doesn't really encompass a specific region, but is situated in the Eastern Mediterranean. It doesn't really have, the Levant doesn't really have any fixed boundaries, and this region has kind of changed over time. But what characterizes the Levant is similar language, culture, and religion. So the countries and regions that include the Levant are Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Cyprus, Turkey, Israel, Jordan, and Palestine. But the broader definition of the Levant refers to the region from Greece to Egypt. So, Greek cooking offers rich and diverse array of foods and beverages that are a culmination of thousands of years of living, cooking, and eating. While we think of Greek food as fresh and inviting, a lot of these products, cooking methods, ingredients have changed, and a lot of them are the result of, like I said, different invasions from different groups that ruled in this area over centuries of times. There are some ingredients, though, that have remained staples in this region, such as bread, olive oils, wine, and these ingredients have remained a staple in the Greek diet for many centuries. So, like I said, bread that came from the agriculture of growing wheat, olives, and wine as well. But a lot of times, like I said, they experienced periods where these food products were not available. So they were also hunter gatherers, and they would forage whatever they could wild as well. So Greek cooking has influenced and been influenced by other cultures, as have the cuisines of most countries. Greece must be foremost in the ranks of having a fusion cuisine. So what is a fusion cuisine? Fusion cuisine is basically a lot of different influences from different cultures and different periods of different rulers that have all been blended and melded together over time. So in 350 BC, Alexander the Great extended the Greek Empire to reach from Europe to India. So you will see a little bit of Indian influence in the cuisine as well. 146 BC, Greece fell to the Romans, which resulted in a blending of Roman influence into Greek cooking. And in 330 AD, Emperor Constantine moved the capital to Constantinople, founding the Byzantine Empire, which in turn fell to the Turks. And during that time, dishes had to be known by Turkish names. So to give you an example of that, one of the dishes that we're going to make this week is a Turkish dish named tzatziki. So tzatziki, if you've never heard of tzatziki, is kind of like a sauce or condiment that Greeks use that consists of yogurt, cucumbers, dill, lemon juice. So you will see Turkish influence in the Greek cuisine as well. So with each successive invasion and settlement came different culinary influences from the Romans, Phoenicians, Balkans, Turks, Slavs, and even the English. There's your tzatziki right there. Hummus, which everybody I'm sure has heard of hummus before, which is just a blended mixture of chickpeas. We are actually going to make a dish that evolved from hummus, known as falafel, which is basically just a dough made from the ground chickpeas and then formed into a ball. That was Arabic. And then the dolmades is basically a grape leaf that is stuffed with some sort of filling. Sometimes it can be feta cheese or rice or any type of grain. Also came from Turkish roots. So these dishes and these ingredients have been adapted over hundreds of years to fit the local taste and traditions on the regions that they're produced in. Also during these times, the classic elements of Greek cuisine traveled across borders, adopted and adapted in Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, and with Alexander the Great, even further east. So Greece is a nation of small farmers who produce an incredible array of mainly organic produced cheeses, oils, fruits, nuts, grains, legumes, and vegetables, supplemented by an array of greens and herbs that grow in the wild. So we probably can credit the vegetarian diet to early Greeks. They were in the earlier centuries in this region. Religion played a big part in the consumption of meat. So when they would kill an animal, they would sacrifice it to the gods. So it was a big ordeal to sacrifice an animal, and it was not really an everyday occurrence. So these people were not really eating meat on a daily basis. It was more of a ritual for them to sacrifice an animal and consume meat. So most of their diet consisted of a lot of grain, beans, vegetables, and things that were produced without the consumption of meat. So these are the foods that are going to be the base of the traditional Greek cuisine. Greek's climate, like I said, is dry. The terrain is dry, so it's good for growing hardy crops like olives and lemons, as well as spices and some herbs such as oregano, basil, mint, thyme, and some vegetables such as eggplant and zucchini, which you will see incorporated in a lot of their dishes. Also, many different types of legumes or beans. The chickpea, which is used in hummus and falafel, is a type of legume that was grown and is still grown in this region. 20% of Greece is made up of islands and no part of the mainland more than 90 miles from the sea. So you will see a lot of fish and seafood are popular in the diet as well. The traditional meats that were sacrificed were lamb and goats. They would seldomly eat poultry, beef, and pork, and they do more so now in present day times. But like I said, in the earlier times, meat was a sacrifice and a it was a special time for them, and mainly happened around holidays and things of that nature. So vineyards cover much of Greece's hilly terrain, and the country has become known for its array of fine wines and spirits, most notably ouzo, which is an anise flavored liqueur that is the national spirit of Greece. So if you don't know what anise is a hard spice that has sort of a licorice flavor to it. So that ouzo, as you can imagine, has a strong licorice flavor. So if you don't like licorice, you probably wouldn't care for it too much. The Greeks typically eat 3 meals a day. The lunch is going to be their largest meal of the day. And they also, I don't know if y'all remember from Gourmet, where we were talking about appetizers and hors d'oeuvres, but they have a variation of that as well, that they called meze, spelled Mezze. So meze is basically just traditional dishes that are served at the same time in small amounts. So if you're thinking of like Spanish cuisine, what they refer to as tapas, the Greeks would refer to as meze. So often the meze precedes a larger meal, or it could be, like I said, just a bunch of small dishes made up into one meal. But the Greeks eat late, so if you try to go to a restaurant before 9 p.m., most likely it's going to be empty. Most Greeks will eat dinner around 9 to 10 p.m., and the reason being is because they eat such a large lunch. So the typical dietary pattern is a light breakfast in the morning. This could often be tea or coffee, or a piece of bread or baked good. Like I said, lunch is going to be their heartiest meal, and they eat something lighter for dinner, such as fruit with yogurt or a salad, or even leftovers from the large lunch. So, just to give you an idea on their meal periods. So, breakfast or proino is not the most popular. Like I said, they eat small and simple, such as tea or bread or pastry. Another simple breakfast could consist of soft boiled eggs with bread. Farmers who needed a breakfast to sustain them consumed trahana, which is a type of grain or pasta made with milk. And today, breakfast is much more westernized. They may eat cereal with milk or yogurt with honey. And some just have coffee and grab something to go, such as a cheese pie or spinach pie known as spanakopita, or a sesame style bagel known as kallori, or even a croissant. So you can see breakfast is not really the highlight of their meal period. So they also have what's called colación, which is a mid-morning snack. They don't really eat a huge breakfast, so they usually get hungry around 11. Their preferred snack is, again, a savory pie. This is typically made with layers of phyllo dough, which is a very thin, light pastry, or a spinach pie, spanakopita, or a ham and cheese sandwich. So lunch, like I said, is the largest meal period. And in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, before the 9 to 5 came about, families ate a meal of the day between 11:30 or 1:30 and 2:30, when schools were let out and shops were closed. So today, however, this type of meal would be consumed at work, and only children will eat at home. Traditionally, the meal consisted of vegetable stews, cheese, bread, salad, wine, and may have, for the more affluent, meat may have been on the menu. Farmers would consume anything they could carry with them, which was basically bread with cheese, olives or tomatoes, or fruit. Today, Greeks still eat traditional vegetable casserole for lunch, but in most cases, pasta, grilled meat, and sandwiches are also on the menu. Afternoon coffee. Greeks would typically take a nap from the Mezze, and when they woke up, which was around 5 in the afternoon, they would drink coffee, or have some other type of small dessert as a cookie or such. Today, many people have the time to take a nap, but the coffee habit still remains. So, like I said, Greeks eat late. Typically, if they eat dinner, it's something small and it's later in the evening. The younger generation currently will eat their main meal at dinner time, but that is not something that was traditionally common. Okay, so let's talk about some of the foods and dishes. The first one on this list we are going to make in our lab this week, which is pita or pocket bread. This is going to vary in the style of pita depending on what region of Greece you're in. It could be thick and hearty or thin and crispy. We are going to make a kind of a hybrid of the two. We're not going to make ours too thick. We're not going to make ours too thin because we're basically using our pita this week as a base for a meat and some vegetables and a sauce. So lavash, also another food from this area. This is going to be similar to the dough of pita, but it is going to be rolled out thinner and it's going to be crispy like a cracker. So it will puff up when it bakes like a pita bread and form a pocket, but it'll be more like a cracker, like I said, thinner. Phyllo is a dough that is used in several dishes from this region, which is basically a type of laminated dough where you have high amounts of fat cut in, and the result is a really thin, crispy pastry. And it's layered. Basically, when you hold a dish with phyllo, you butter the sheets of dough heavily, and you layer them. Depending on the recipe, you can layer them 6 to 12 layers between your filling. So the result when you bake it is a bunch of tiny, thin little layers of crispy pastry. And the two main dishes that they make with this dough are baklava, which is a sweetened dessert that is layered with the phyllo dough and normally a mixture of nuts and honey. And spanakopita, which is basically the savory version of baklava, but it uses feta cheese and spinach and garlic. The next dish on the list, falafel, which is one of the items we're going to make in lab this week, is a paste of chickpeas and seasonings. Sometimes it has onions, garlic, herbs mixed into it as well. These are then shaped into balls and deep fried. They often serve these with the condiment I was talking about earlier, tzatziki sauce. Again, that is a mixture of yogurt, cucumber, dill, garlic, and lemon juice. We're also going to make that in lab this week. The next item is tahini. If you've ever had hummus, you've probably had tahini. This is kind of a secret ingredient in tahini that gives it kind of that nutty, rich flavor. So tahini is basically like peanut butter, but made with sesame seeds. And like I said, they use that in the base of a lot of sauces, as well as the base in hummus. The next dish would be tabbouleh, and this is a salad consisting of soaked bulgur, which is a grain from this region. If I could have compared bulgur to anything, it's kind of like a larger grain of rice. They soak it and it softens up, and then they mix it with minced parsley, mint, diced tomatoes, olive oil, and lemon juice. This is a very common side dish that they will consume. And then the last dish on this list is shawarma. So if you've ever had a gyro, which is a pita pocket stuffed with meat, whether it be chicken, lamb, beef, lettuce, tomato, cucumber, tzatziki sauce. But meat that typically goes in a gyro is off the shawarma. So what is a shawarma? This is basically a vertical rotisserie. So they basically slice the meat really thin and they stack it on a spit, and that spit rotates. And on one side of the spit, there's a heat source that cooks it as it rotates vertically. So the end result is very tender, juicy meat because all the fat drips directly down onto the meat below it. Like I said, they use shawarma still today. But if you've ever had a traditional Greek gyro, you've probably had some form of shawarma. All right, so before we go any further with this PowerPoint, I just want to show y'all some of these dishes. Uh-oh. Okay, there we go. Okay, so some of the dishes I just discussed. I'm having some technical difficulties here. Y'all just bear with me. There we go. All right, so the first one. This is tzatziki. So we are going to make a version of this tomorrow, or whatever your lab day is this week. Like I said, this is a mixture of yogurt. Sometimes the recipe calls for sour cream, olive oil, parsley. Sometimes it has mint mixed into it, but it is also seasoned with lemon juice and garlic. They use this as a condiment on several different things, or they will often just eat it as a dip with grilled pita bread. We are going to use it this week as a condiment on your gyro that you're going to make. And we're also going to use it as a condiment or a dipping sauce for the falafel that we make. So, falafel. Let me show you an image of the falafel. These kind of look like little fritters. But again, these are made from a dough of ground chickpeas. Again, they could have garlic, onions, herbs mixed into them, but then they're formed into these little balls and they're deep fried. And we're again gonna serve these with tzatziki sauce when we make these this week. So just to give you a visual of what we're going to be doing, this is the falafel. The next thing is your pita. So here's an image of pita bread. If y'all have never seen pita bread, I'm sure most of you have. But again, this is the way we're going to do it is we're going to make a dough. This is a lean dough, so it's just butter, or sorry. Good question, David. The difference between pita, I was just about to get in that. Pita is a lean dough, and it's just made with flour, yeast, and water. So it's unleavened, which will, it's leavened with yeast. So when it bakes, it will kind of puff up and form a pocket. The difference between pita and naan is enriched. So that means a fat is added to it. So the fat that we add in naan bread is yogurt. So you'll get a little bit different texture with the naan bread. Honestly, I prefer the pita over the naan, but for all intents and purposes, we are going to make pita this. Naan. You will see naan throughout this region as well. I can't. I'm not too educated on where the region that naan comes from, but I would assume it came from the Middle Eastern, Afghanistan, Iraq, Iran areas, but I can't be 100% certain on that. So, but I do know the difference between the two. The next thing we're going to make this week is kind of a modernized version of the shawarma that I was talking about. So these are called koftas. So basically, instead of doing a shawarma where we have to slice a bunch of meat thin and stack it on a spit and roast it, which is pretty time consuming, we're going to make these koftas. So we're going to take a mixture of ground lamb and beef and kind of form it into, well, you can see in the photo, we're going to kind of form it into a little log, and then we're going to skewer those and grill them. And these will go inside of our pita breads. We're going to top them with some condiments such as lettuce, tomato, and then the condiment that we'll use will be the tzatziki sauce on these as well. So you're going to produce 4 items in lab this week. These kofta, your pita bread, the tzatziki sauce, and the falafel. So we'll operate labs like we've been doing, where we have one prep day, and then we'll proceed the prep day with the production day where we will produce all these items. Okay. So that was just to give you a visual on what we're going to be producing this week. So I'm going to hop back to the PowerPoint and we'll close this lecture out. So all right. Am I still sharing my screen? Did y'all see the pictures though of the foods that I was showing? Okay. Let me go back here. Okay, here we go. Sorry, my computer's acting a little funny this morning. Okay, so where we left off was Greek holidays. So the Feast of St. Basil. This is the feast celebrated on New Year's Day in Greece and has significance as Orthodox Christians throughout the world commemorate the memory of one of the greatest fathers of the church, St. Basil. The personality of St. Basil gives life and sparkle to the feast and has host of traditions and customs. Also, Greek Independence Day, which is celebrated on March 25th. This marks the struggle against the Ottomans and the Feast of the Annunciation. The Feast of the Annunciation marks the visit of the angel Gabriel to the Virgin Mary, during which he told her that she would be the mother of Jesus. So this is celebrated on the 25th of March every year in Greece. And you know, a lot of they celebrate with a lot of foods and different dishes as well on these holidays. So a little bit of fun fact history from this region. The first cookbook was written by Stratos in 330 BC, which suggests that cooking has always been an importance and significance in the Greek society. We can credit the Greeks with our tradition of tall white chef hats. In the Middle Ages, the monastic brothers who prepared food in the Greek Orthodox monasteries wore these tall white hats to distinguish them from the monks who wore large black hats. So that's where the tall white chef hat comes from. In French cooking, in French tradition, though, it's believed, and they believe that the taller your white hat, the more experience you had. So it is also, the tradition of the tall white hat has also been kind of a French thing as well, but it originated with the Greeks. To a large degree, vegetarian cuisine can be traced to foods and recipes which originated in Greece. Hopefully, by now you realize that the reason that the vegetarian diet stemmed from this region. Like I said, meat was a very ritualistic thing and only happened on special occasions. Many ingredients used in the Greek cooking were unknown in the country until the Middle Ages. So things like potatoes, tomatoes, spinach, and bananas were not really incorporated in dishes in this region until the discovery of the Americas. So in summary, Greek food is simple and elegant, with flavor subtle to robust, texture smooth and crunchy, fresh and timeless, nutritious and healthy. And it's probably one of my favorite cuisines just because of the robust and different textures that you get. And it's also good for you. You don't really see many overweight Greeks. Okay. That will conclude your lecture for Greece.